So starting with the container shortages. So what is the situation and the scenario? I mean, are you guys facing any problems? Are we looking at any scenario whereby there are certain suggestions we can make? Do you feel that there's something that BA can do to kind of improve the situation at the moment? Anything that we can all discuss and conclude? Christine, I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, I'm just going to add quickly while I have signal. I would say everybody needs to plan very much in advance and stay in very close touch, even if there's a nominated forwarder, stay in very close touch with the forwarder. But we are booking and chasing containers 3 weeks out. You cannot wait until 2 days before you need the container. So the key is in good planning and advanced planning and keeping in touch and looking at alternatives. If you have a nominated forwarder, get permission from your customer to open up and use other people. That works. It works two ways. You have additional options. It also makes the nominated forwarder jump a bit higher. So that's the tactics that are actually working with us. I would say 100% advanced planning and minimum 3 weeks out, starting to look and see what the container situation is for your goods. That's essential.
Thanks, Christine. I would totally agree when Christine is saying that we need to branch out into more forwarders. Personally speaking, uh, we practically none of our nominated forwarders are frankly giving containers because right now the demand and supply situation is so skewed that any forwarder who has any generalized agreed rate with the buyers, they're frankly not giving it at those rates to the buyers because they're getting better rates from the markets because of the desperate situation we are in with the containers. So what is happening essentially is that we are taking containers from outside at higher prices, giving them whatever they need. And there is a huge jump of prices also that has been happening constantly ever since this entire thing has started. But yeah, I mean, in my experience, maybe it's different from Christine's experience. Advanced planning has had zero help. I mean, my all my forwarders know the requirements we have, but that planning is really going for a toss because they don't have containers to give. Like we've approached CMA, we've approached Evergreen, we've approached every possible shipping line to figure out what's happening. And forwarders who were earlier getting containers have stopped getting containers. Shipping lines have stopped taking bookings. That's what we hear all the time. So there are newer nuances that are coming on by the day. So planning practically has gone for a total toss. So that's why I just wanted to understand, is it just us? Is it everybody facing this kind of an issue? So what's happening with everybody else? Uh, Aristad, you need to unmute yourself. I believe you're speaking, but we can't hear you.
Now, what I was saying, I think there are container available, but it goes at a premium.
Correct.
All the shipping line are trying to bargain with the forwarders and try to get a better rate. Especially the people who are facing the major problem are the nominated forwarder, because as you said rightly, the rates are fixed.
Yeah.
So they are not able to pay more. And the buyer, of course, they don't want to pay more. And the forwarder are stuck, and they wait for the containers to come, and at time they have to wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, till the time we push, and then they may be negotiating. The buyer must be negotiating with the forwarder to get the container.
Right. Right. No, that's exactly what's been happening right now.
Yeah.
Any suggestions from the member body what we possibly can look at? Because I don't know, we've run out of excuses also. We've tried to approach the government departments. It's a slow moving snail pace work that's been happening.
We have to make containers.
I
think that is happening.
facing...
I think the production of container is on a war footing in India now. I think once those lots comes into the market, I think things will stabilize. I was told that there has been a lot of permission given to unit who are manufacturing containers now. So let's hope that
I'm hearing
works out.
Because of the kind of practices the shipping lines are able to get paid in terms of inventory, they are not willing to add to the uh, the regular business, and the demand supply situation was balanced. And that's where the biggest issue is, because what I'm hearing, I have a whole video whereby some person in Thailand, some forwarder, has made beautiful videos to why what happened in the first place. I would just mute you because there's a lot of background noise.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Yeah. So some person in Thailand has made beautiful videos, and he revalidates the same thing as the future of the shipping line is not that they are really looking at adding more containers. They're rather just keeping the situation as is, because with the same amount of business, they're able to earn much more. So that's my concern, whether, what we're hearing about containers is actually happening, or there is really some real movement.
See, right now situation with the LA port we have already seen. Same is with the Sydney port. Like container sailed from Singapore on 14th of February, and it is reaching Sydney on 5th of March. They are ideally standing in the sea with the loaded containers. So inventories are with either on the vessels or with the suppliers. So inventory situation will only be coming out when you have proper vessel operation, port operation going on. LA, I think 20-25 vessels were pending for offloading. Sydney Harbor, last week I checked because we have 5 containers, buyer is waiting for that. But it is going to be offloaded tomorrow. So due to COVID, the situation is there, and the freight rate, yes, like East Coast, probably it has jumped to 5,500 for a 40 feet IQ. West Coast probably 7,000. So these are the high freight where we all have to make this logistic cost lower on that. What suggestion we can give to the government that as of now, inventory situation is better than whatever it was 3 months back. But empty containers are available at say Mundra or JNPT, but they are not available in Jodhpur, Jaipur, or Delhi, or say Moradabad, because shipping line don't want to pay for repositioning, empty repositioning, and probably shipper also don't want to pay. So to enhance the exports, we should give representation to the government that Concor should either move these containers on subsidized rates or maybe free. This is the one suggestion we can give to the government. Because import is not coming, so empty inventories are not coming, and shipping line don't want to do anything for free now. Before they were doing it, even in Jodhpur, it is a export surplus area. There is hardly any import, and they were freely doing empty repositioning. But now they are not doing because they know that shipper will do at their own cost, and they will probably pay more. Or why to spend this 13,000-14,000 rupees on this? So finally, buyer is suffering, and logistic cost is increasing. So this representation, I think, as a body, BAA should write to. We all know how much they will listen to us. That's a separate thing, but at least we should raise our voice on that, because that is the bottleneck. Why the containers are not coming? Nobody want to pay. Containers are available at port or at JNPT, Nhava Sheva, or Mundra. Containers are available, but they are not given to the inland ICDs.
Okay. So you feel that if they're able to move it internally, then we should not have this crunch that we're facing.
Yeah, at least because major problem is coming on the ICDs. If you are putting your cargo direct to Mundra, probably you will get one vessel skip, and second vessel you will get loading. But in ICDs, the inventory is not there. So first of all, you fight for the inventory 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks for the loading. So 5 weeks, ideally, it is happening.
Point noted, Deepak. Thank you. That was well put. Any other suggestions from any of the members? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next point.
But my worry is, if there are no import, from where the containers are going to be, generated, from where the inventory is going to come, because that's what is worrying. Since import is being controlled and has been reduced, we'll not have container. People may have inventory at the moment, but they may not have it for a longer time. That's what is my
See,
worry.
what we anticipate in next 3 months, the inventory situation will be normal. Once vessels are offloaded and vessels are free to carry the cargo, like Sydney, you are having almost 30 vessels standing outside the Bay Area. So those vessels, or mode of transportation, those should get free. Once they start moving freely, then you will have inventory situation regularized. And it's not that at world level inventory situation is low, because that much of cargo is not moving, but containers are stuck. Like probably 1 lakh containers are stuck in US due to West Coast strike and West Coast issues. So those containers were offloaded late. Now they are going to take turnaround time would be more. So, that would be, I think 3 months they should come back into the system. And inventory, although in India we are restricting on imports, but still import is much more higher than our exports. At least it is 3 times.
I think Christine wants to say something. Her hand is raised.
Christine, please. Yep.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with Deepak, and I do think that perhaps one way, and what Aristide said as well, I believe the container shortage has improved, but the containers are not always in the right place. So if we could push the government to at least facilitate getting containers to important export, even if we focused on our area, so Muradabad, Jaipur, Jodhpur, getting containers, Panipat and South Belt, getting containers positioned there the government would take up that slack. In fact, I thought the government did offer to do something about that. So that could be something that we could push quite quickly, because there is a cost. I mean, we're hearing $300, $600 to pick up a container from somewhere where you're not located. And that's a cost that nobody wants to bear. So if the government was willing to facilitate that movement, that might be something for BAA to lobby on.
What I would like to know is, how is China grappling with the situation? Because they have, I mean, in China, the situation is worse, as we understand. It is the cost of the movement of containers is literally 2 to 3 times. So if maybe we have some learnings from them.
Freight costs has increased a lot there also in China.
I know, that's
Vietnam,
what I'm saying. More than India.
Vietnam, and availability of containers is even worse than India.
Exactly.
Factories are full with the cargoes, they cannot load. This is a problem which is going everywhere. If you see among all the Asian countries, what we have noticed, India is still in the best situation.
Yeah.
We are not the worst in the availability and the price also.
Maybe we need to study a bit more closely how they are grappling with it, as I said, and maybe something to learn from there, and then circulate it among our members to be able to at least respond accordingly to our customers, that it's really not as exaggerated as we all feel it is. Of course, on a daily basis, we are all facing a lot of problems. That's no two ways about it.
They are also facing a huge problem. Most of the factories are full. There is no space even to move inside the factories. So there is almost no solution. And the freight prices are much, much higher than India.
But the cause is what? The containers are just stuck in the US is what one thing Deepak said. What?
You know what? You've asked a very good question. Let me actually take you through that 5 minutes video. The guy has beautifully put the point across.
Right.
So give me a second. I'll just play the video for everybody who has not really seen this happening so far. So just give me a second.
To think, create.
Are you able to see my screen share?
Not yet.
One sec.
Give your child the superpower of the future.
Hello, it's Eno. Today,
Are you able to hear the voice?
Yes.
to explain the cause of current container. It also impacts manufacturers, trading companies, and retail businesses. Shortages have become These days, container shortages have become a serious problem in the logistics industries. This problem is not just associated with logistics industries. It also impacts manufacturers, trading companies, and retail businesses. What is the cause of container shortages, and why are we unable to get space on vessels? Today, I'd like to briefly explain the causes of the serious container shortage in 2020 from my point of view. The reason for container shortages is COVID-19. From the beginning of 2020, coronavirus is raging around the world, and then from March and April 2020, many countries entered lockdown. When they entered lockdown, their economic activities were restricted, which also affected the people who work outside. When we entered lockdown, the number of port laborers was reduced. This caused the speed of cargo handling to reduce. Also, some factories temporarily closed, which caused a large number of containers to be stopped at port. As movement of cargo was limited, shipping lines reduced the number of ships to stabilize the cost. Shipping lines would make losses if they continue to send vessels while they have no cargo. Therefore, they reduced the number of vessels to maintain the ocean freight. Most countries limited economic activities from April until June. From July, we were able to see that world economic activities started to recover. Coronavirus started in China, which led to them setting COVID plans at an early stage. They have now managed to control coronavirus. The infection rate in China is lower than Japan. Also, due to the support from government funding, Chinese factories were able to recover their production at an early stage. When Chinese factories started to produce, it restarted exporting activities. This increased exports from China. China was able to manage the coronavirus, and they were able to restart their production at their factories earlier than other countries. This encouraged other business to try to produce in China, which increased export from China. Normally, from September, large volumes of cargoes are sent to North America for Christmas businesses. Large volumes of cargoes are shipped from China to North America. There are approximately 900,000 by 20 feet containers sent from China to North America per month. In addition to this, China has a long vacation called National Day of the People's Republic of China in October. This leads to them trying to send cargo before the holiday starts. This drastically increases the volume of export from China as well. Also, as shipping lines were reducing the number of vessels to collect empty containers, our company in Thailand was told to limit our export to China by shipping lines. On occasion, we were even refused to book large volumes of export. I think the shipping lines were controlling the amount of containers exported to China. To solve the issue of container shortages, shipping lines are reducing free time and detention period. For example, some shipping lines have reduced their free time in Japan from 14 to 7 days. They established a system to quickly collect containers, unload cargo, and return the containers. This is information I obtained from America. Currently, there is lack of manpower and chassis due to coronavirus. In North America, they collect containers at port and take them inland. However, the containers do not return for a long time. The cause of delay is due to manpower issues at the consignee. Also, there is a shortage of drivers, which means they are unable to bring the containers back quickly. Therefore, there is a lack of chassis to collect containers from the port. Because of these reasons, more containers are stopped at the port. It normally takes 1 to 2 days to return empty containers and chassis. However, currently they may not return for over a week. These problems are repeatedly happening, allowing the situation to worsen. In one example, the reason of the delay was explained as a lack of drivers and chassis. This led to them collecting the containers 2 weeks after arrival of the ship. These reasons are causing the lack of containers. Sea shipment costs for North America have increased dramatically. Normal ocean freight to Los Angeles port, which is referred as entrance of Asia, normally costs no more than $2,000 for a 40-feet container. However, some shipping lines have increased the charge to nearly $4,000. I have explained this topic in another video, but shipping lines are engaged in a price war. In 2016, this resulted in a major Korean shipping line filing for bankruptcy. As there is a lack of containers, it is understandable that they increased the ocean freight. According to media reports, this problem will be solved in February or March next year. However, I am not sure exactly when it will end. Depending on the impact of coronavirus, it may slow down cargo handling even more.
So that was pretty much about what happened. So it is a very apt video. But then at the end of the day, we've been having discussions with a lot of freight forwarders who are saying the situation is going to continue as long as September or October, which is a huge cause of concern because, as Amrish rightly said, people have ready stocks of goods lying at their factories, and factories are unable to produce, and especially smaller towns and cities like Muradabad or Panipat or places where factories are not that big, they are unable to sustain their productions now because everything is so chock-a-block. So I don't know. I mean, effectively, it's a temporary situation. Even if the government agrees to bring in the containers free of cost, that still will be a temporary situation as of now. What Aristide is saying, I think, is a very important and a far bigger problem for us is if containers don't continue to pour in, then where are we going to go? And that's the problem we need to think through and find a solution for. Because if there is not more in circulation, eventually we are going to end up in trouble.
Either way, I think, Anchal, what's the crux of it? I think the video was really interesting as it points down in pointers. It gives us clear, understanding as to what created this problem. But I feel the only solution that we have right now, apart from consoling each other, saying we are all, impacted, is that we talk to them. I mean, as a body, we talk to them. They are the only people who can be suggesting something to us, and accordingly, it's like. Four bonds is forearmed, and that's about it. So we can only be lobbying with them, getting some feelers as to what they are doing about it, and just circulate this information down lines to our vendors and just prepare much in advance. It's like even on our POs now, what Christine was saying, even on our POs now, we are getting a sub line saying that please plan 3 weeks. You used to take 1 week from the FCR dates to do X factory, now plan 3 weeks in advance. So it's just that all of us need to calculate that time into our TNAs and just work accordingly.
I wish 3 weeks was enough time, Sandhya. I don't think that's helping. I'm telling you, I can crib so much about the 3 weeks because we are planning for a month and a half in advance. We have like open orders for containers. And if you ask for 50, you get 25. If you ask for 60, you get. So any which ways, I mean, as you rightly said, we can make as much effort. So definitely, I think one of the things that we will do at BA is to put forward a recommendation to logistics department at the ministry to figure out what can be the possible relief that they can offer to get the containers from the port to the dry ports. So
weren't we talking to the Container Corporation of India, CCI, at some point? I remember we had discussed this with Vishal.
Vishalji, are you there?
You remember, Anchal, in one of the meets about maybe a month or so?
Say that they will connect, but I don't think that that thread continued, Sandhya, because I have not been updated if somebody did take that forward.
Okay. Because perhaps they have the answers. Yeah, they are the ones perhaps who can tell us something.
Correct. So I think CCI should definitely be an approachable. I'll put that down. We'll figure out somebody, and we'll approach them also. For sure. Done. Sounds good.
Achal, hi. Do you know the statistics of imports of containers?
No, Pramod.
Can we find out, because that's hitting. One thing which I know is that Singapore, the port is completely full and the ships are docked there and they are not moving because parking charges are much, much lower than the higher freight. So everyone is making money. So what's the imports which is getting that will lead to the inventory of the empty containers as well.
Okay, so we'll try and find that data, the import data of containers. Any idea where you think we can get this one? Maybe except from the Container Corporation, I don't see another route.
That would be available in the customs if we have any reach to them.
Or we can find out at dollarbusiness.com.
Dollar Business, Amrish. Amrish, would you?
That
The
data is not
dollarbusiness.com.
accurate.
That's an Indian media company.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right, Amriji. That data is not very accurate. I
Okay.
have tried it, but that's an approximate. You are right. That's an approximate thing which we can get.
Yeah, you can say about 90% it can be there. That's correct.
You say so, sir.
Done. We'll try and find the data. We'll also try and see if there are other sources where we
But
can get this data.
there is a big problem of getting containers also to India. It's not only that we are having this problem. Because of lockdown in Europe, if you are importing something from Europe, it is very hard to get a container from
I
there.
agree.
Availability of containers is very short in Europe, even other way around.
No, everywhere in the world, Amriji, I mean, we face problem from China, we face problem from Vietnam, and Europe as well. All the places have been a bit choked because these shipping lines are having their own agenda as of now.
Pramod, you
So
were-
reaching and hitting the right nail is the concern.
you
From
probably
China, we are paying around $9,000 to UK. So earlier we used to pay around $2,200. So the problem is everywhere.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
The only happy ending to this probably is that we are in a better position than China and Vietnam.
That's true.
Actually, we're in a better position than China and Vietnam. That's the only happy phase that we can have at the moment, because there the impact is far worse. Far worse. I mean,
The only consolation.
sorry, Sandhya?
The only consolation, I said.
That's the only consolation, honestly, because हमारा double हुआ होगा तो उनके prices तो triple and 4 times पे.
Correct.
I think till the time everything comes to normal, I think like as Christine said, we have to carefully plan and push forwarder, shipping line, buyer, everybody. We have to be at it all the time. That is the only way for the moment. That is only solution. That is only immediate solution.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, my customer from Christine from Vietnam to UK is paying $13,000 for a container.
My
It's
God.
not funny.
Wow.
I mean, it totally outrides the cost of the product these days.
And what is the value of the good in that container? May I know?
That's what I'm saying. It totally overrules the product inside the container.
Yeah.
Container itself product बन चुका है आज के डेट पे 13,000 का container है यार. I mean, it's not.
Criminal. It's criminal.
It's totally criminal.
If you are importing something from Thailand, the container value is $2,800 and the freight is $3,100.
Look at that.
It's a joke. Yeah, it's a joke.
Yeah.
But you cannot do anything.
Yeah. Chalu, Anchal, I think let's move to the next point because it's almost 40. Yeah.
So the next point was the raw material price rise that we've had. Obviously, that's been the other dent in our businesses with the amount of price. पहले wood का बढ़ा, फिर cotton का बढ़ा, अब metal का बढ़ गया है. So there's nothing really left except for glass. Probably we're still stable. Not that India does so much of glass from India. But how are you guys faring on the prices? Are you guys holding fort? Are you guys passing on?
Actually, it's all over. I mean, it started with the raw material and it has reached to the end user as well. So what we do is we share the Furniture Today's article where they have been telling almost every week there is one article.
Mhm.
So we have been forwarding and we have been helping the vendors to get their pricing right. So as a retailer, I mean, they are changing their prices.
Sorry, go ahead, Pramod.
Yeah. So as the retailers, they are changing their price. Wholesalers are changing their price. It's everywhere. The push is everywhere, and it's not going to stop as well for some time. And I mean, we majorly deal with wood and metal. So this is something which has been a lot of issue, lot of pain point there.
Correct.
So the only solution was to get to the next level.
Right. You know, the concern is, I mean, all my customers are asking me today, is this a temporary arrangement or should we consider this permanent? And I really honestly don't have an answer to this because
They know the answer,
Achal,
Achal, because they have been facing this problem from China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and now the Chinese are investing in Cambodia, so they are actually going to have furniture shipping out from there as well. So, I mean, I'm only talking about furniture because
that's what you majorly do. Yeah.
I think every retailer are watching each other. I think they have to increase their selling price. I don't think at the rate we are in now, I don't think they'll be able to sell the same price as they were selling earlier, because nobody wants to take the first step. I think if one takes the plunge and increase their retail price, I think everybody will follow.
You know,
I think
my concern is not more from the buyer's trend. My concern is India is already known for its high prices. This dent, and it's not like 5-6%, yeah, 30-35% price hike.
I know.
Achal, this
Dent
is
is
every year. This is every year, but the problem is this is every year on in March they have their contracts. So in China, so the price of the raw material always go high, but this time it's around 30%. The LME moved, the copper LME moved from 6,800 to 9,500 right now. So this is a temporary phase. I think in next 2 months the LME will come to the same point.
Sam, what I was reading up on a few things regarding this price hike. What I understand is that although our production has increased, especially for iron and these metals have increased by 30%, but our export has gone up by 90%. And that's
I
what
will I will share you on the group the LME chart of last 3 months. So you will get a better idea on that, because I'm sharing that with my customers to get the price hikes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is the kind of information we need, Sam. Do share it with all of us because, frankly, we all know it's genuine. It's not ingenuine, but we all deal with different kind of customers. Some are very nice and they understand and they cooperate and they pass on. Some don't. So this kind of information sharing will help us at least tell to our customers. We can, in fact, this is a recorded video which we'll be putting up. So we can share it in the wider community for everybody to understand exactly the pain points that the vendor has. But again, the question arises, and what I read is if the export of the raw material is not stopped by the government for a couple of months or at least 4 to 5 months, then the situation is not going to retrieve. And that is where the biggest concern is.
I'll talk about cotton, Anchal, because that's primarily something I deal in a lot with home textiles on the home textiles front. What has really happened has been drastic. I disagree with Sam that it is a year-on-year phenomenon. It's perhaps used to happen, yes, but the difference used to be between 5 to 7%, and it was a very temporary phenomenon. It would happen sometime around Hymtex. Most of the time it would start rising from the beginning of January. And when we're all booking our annual orders for winter, it would kind of stabilize sometime around March. But this time it is happening continuously, like week on week, it's happening 3%, 4%, 5%. And today we are at 40%, 45%. So it is not possible that the vendors will not ask for an increase. We have to go back to the buyers. But yes, the only silver lining in this is that it is a global phenomenon. So yes, they all understand, they are upfront, they are maintaining their charts as well. They are much, much more educated about it. They don't, come from a place. Yeah, they don't come from a completely, okay, what are you talking about? So that's one thing. But what also is really, I've already brought this up in one of our last meets. It's what is also disturbing, highly disturbing, is the pressure that India has on the organic cotton. Basically, the globally the demand of organic cotton has increased so much, especially from apparel, that India is the biggest producer of organic cotton. Actually India is the second largest producer of cotton, but on organic India is the biggest. And the quantities are completely exhausted. We do not have cotton available, and the suppliers who have tons of, I mean, I've got terry towels which are about 100 tons of orders waiting. I'm not able to confirm them. So it's a loss for us. For India, it's a loss. And obviously my buyer says that I'll wait for another week, but if you don't find me a solution, I need to go out of India.
Correct.
So this is something on which I feel is something really, really a problem. And I don't know what we can do about it, but I'm sure all of us on this forum today are suffering.
You're absolutely right. In fact, Sandhya, I would say cotton price hike is actually a world over phenomena. So there at least we are much better placed because puri dunya mein ho raha hai, hamare saath bhi ho raha hai, big deal, just like containers. But the price hike for wood and metal is not a universal phenomena. That's pretty much just India. And that's where it's a bigger concern for us today. Cotton, I do believe they are now restricting and stabilizing the prices. This is what I hear, that they have fixed the bale price now and they would not let it go up. But let's see how it reacts in the near future.
All the balance between export import, again, they are exporting a lot of the cotton yarn, which means that they are leaving less for the Indian community for the export. And so they don't care because they are getting much better returns when they export it. So that's about it. It's everybody's trying to see their individual gain.
Yes, yes.
I want to correct you. It's metal and wood is not only in India.
Is it, Amrit? Is it in the other countries as well?
Yes, I was just working, you see my desk, it's full of papers. It's a Vietnam, one of my files. And you can see everything is increasing.
So what's the situation in Vietnam vis-a-vis metal and wood? Because to be very honest, I've been following that. Although there has been slight price rise, but that is owing to majorly the demand supply situation, which has become very skewed in Vietnam, not because of the raw material price.
It's also raw material.
Is it?
Around end product has been increasing by 5 to 7%.
Okay, that's still tolerable, not like a 30%.
No, I'm talking about the end product, which include everything.
Yeah.
There are certain raw materials which are gone up to 20-25%.
Right.
If as of today, the raw material price of metal, we are still cheaper than any other country.
Really?
Yes.
That's
we are cheaper than Poland, we are cheaper than Romania, cheaper than Turkey, cheaper than Vietnam. China is almost same like us. Even after this increase of price by 40-45%.
Ambrish, would you be able to help us with an analysis on this? It'll be a very helpful analysis for all of us here.
Yeah, but these all are, there is nothing which you can have on the internet or something. I can share the figures because I am buyer for all these countries. I can tell you there is not one single day where I don't have a price issue coming to my desk from a company, whether it's India or abroad.
That's very interesting because so far my understanding was that Vietnam mein price hike is majorly because of the skewed demand. Excessive
I am working only on Vietnam prices and next week I have 5 meetings for Vietnam.
Right. So do share the data with us, whatever you can, Ambrish. It'll help us also put things.
You just let me know what you need. I can share. That's not a problem. Percentage, how much percent?
Really?
Every country has a data.
Perfect. That's. I think I'll connect with you offline on this, and we'll.
Even biggest producers of MDF or chipboard like Kronospan, Romania, they all have increased their prices.
And what's the driving factor of their price hike? We know what is our.
It's the whole chain. Okay, we are still doing a lot from our country with the solid wood, but many countries are doing, let's say, the panel board furniture. So the basic wood has been increased, the glue has been increased. For the edge bendings, the plastic has shown about 140% increase. It's everything which has become expensive. First of all, the transport cost worldwide has become expensive. So every raw material has become expensive.
Okay, get it.
We are still one of the luckiest people who are doing business in euros from India because euro has been increased by 10% in a year's time.
Right. Right.
Against Indian rupee.
So I think this is something that we should work on, and I don't know if the exporter associations are really doing any further lobbying in terms of trying to get some common consensus on this. But
there is a big lobbying going on also with the raw materials, with the metal, with the MDF, with the chipboards.
Correct.
Other than solid wood.
Right. So I don't think this is a particular matter on which we at BA can really do much as far as lobbying is concerned, not being in direct function with the ministries and people who are controlling this. Or is there a suggestion from any of the members?
Our Honorable Finance Minister herself said in our budget speech about the metal, he reduces the import duty of metal. Honorable Nitin Gadkari Sahab is also saying that there is a cartel going on, better use the PVC bars instead of TMT bars. So government is knowing, but they are helpless.
They're not really doing something.
The duty was reduced only 2.5%, that's it.
Yeah, but then they come again with the anti-dumping.
Yeah, anti-dumping was there, so the prices have increased just because of that.
Right. Right. Fair
Yes,
enough.
what we can do is we can save our panel board exports if we can push government to stop anti-dumping duties on MDF and chipboard. That is the only, and on the solid wood, if we can ask government to reduce their custom duties.
In fact, this is something because the major issue has been with mango. So other than mango, I know we're using a lot of acacia, and probably Pramod and Amrish can throw a little more light on this. Are you guys using any other wood other than these two major woods?
Yes, I use a huge quantity with oak.
Oak. Okay. And what else? I mean, is oak price competitive for you, Amrish, in comparison to mango and acacia?
Yes.
And majorly being done in Jodhpur?
No, Jaipur.
Jaipur. Okay. Any other
For
wood?
me today, oak at the end is more cheaper than acacia.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Because oak usually buyers buy from Europe more than anywhere else.
Yes.
So I'm impressed to hear that oak is doing well in India.
I almost do 50 containers a month from India in oak.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Anybody else using any other form of wood to kind of salvage this wood price situation?
No, I'm using a lot of panel board also today.
Panel board.
MDF, chipboards.
Right. But are they competitive, Amrish, when we talk about these panel boards in comparison to Vietnam and especially China?
Yes.
Is it just because Habufa is buying it because you're buying it in quantities?
No, not that only. In comparison to American quantities, Habufa quantities are nothing.
Okay.
Or none of the European buyer has a huge quantities like Americans.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Never will have also Europe those quantities.
Right. So it is generally a good price that we can get for these two. So that's an alternative for people who are into this industry that we can possibly look at, try using oak and panel boards. I'm not sure. I mean, to be very honest, Amrish, I've tried using MDF from India, but people generally try to outsource it because quality of MDF itself in India is not as good as it is in China.
China, again, Achal has been, you can have everything in India, you can have today also everything. So it's been, everything is available in every country.
Absolutely.
I have experienced, luckily,
I just want to butt in here
first time from China, India, and Vietnam, I know, or even East Europe, I know there is every kind of people everywhere.
I agree.
So we were getting a lot of CARB certified MDF from Malaysia, but it has recently become available in India now. So we are just starting to purchase from an Indian supplier, and let's hope it works out.
Vishal, CARB certified MDF हमेशा से थी India में.
But there were certain technicalities which were not being met here. So we would have them imported from Malaysia, but now they are meeting those exact specifications which are coming from Malaysia.
Right, because
I'm
buyers.
still not sure whether it will be up to the mark, but
Yeah.
just to take care of all of this non-import business we're trying to do it from here.
Ashley has approved one of the Indian supplier for their MDF production.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes. Ashley certified.
Right. Fair enough. So moving on to the next point, we have threat of cyber frauds to our industry. I don't know how many of you guys have had this issue of or have heard of this issue, but including me, there's another member in the GB. We both have faced issues with cyber fraud in the last 1 month. So we did think it was very important for us to kind of escalate it to the larger community, because I've been hearing from a lot of vendors also that they're facing these threats in terms of wrong banking details being sent to the buyers for payments. So we prepared a very short presentation for you to take you through what is the modus operandi of these frauds that are happening, and also what safety measures we can take in order to avoid such issues happening in the future. So Abhi, would you please share the presentation on screen? Thank you, Vita. Just take to the first slide. Okay, so just to give you a quick run up on how exactly this fraud is happening. Modus operandi, this might just be one of them. There might be other ways of doing it, so we'll all have to be watchful, and I would request the community to share as and when some such thing happens, so that other people can at least make note and be more cautious about it in the future. So what normally happens when a hacker wants to commit a cyber fraud and take some money away from you or your buyers or your suppliers, then they would hack into an email account, your email account, your vendor's email account. It could be any email account. There are various methods in which they would hack into the email account. So supposingly they get into an email account. So say there's a company called Greenwoods. So if greenwoods.com is the domain that the buying agent is using, the hacker would get into an email account of Greenwoods using whatever way they do, and they would buy domains which are very similar to greenwoods.com. So he might just eliminate an S and just make it greenwood.com. He might eliminate an O and just make it WODS.com, or might just change the extension name of .com becomes .in or .net, which we generally don't observe. So the hacker would buy such a domain extension, hack into the account. Once you get into the account, that hacker is going to now put a forwarder on the emails of that particular account to the wrong account. So if I was a hacker and I put a hack into the system, then all my emails that were ideally supposed to come to the buying agent would now reach the hacker because of the forwarder put on the buying agent's account. The hackers are always very vigilant. So the moment an email comes from a buyer where he sees a point where he can start interaction and start sending the right information in terms of change of bank account, then they would delete the email from your system so that you don't respond on it. Alternately, from their fake account, they will send an email asking the buyer to send the payments into a wrong banking account. Now, what happens is, because we generally have a name that is showcased. So if my emails are aanchal@insource.net, but when it goes out to the customer, it just shows Aanchal Insource International. It does not show aanchal@insource.net. And that is where the chances of fraud increase. Because if the other person does not see that it is not actually the correct amount, maybe my net has become IN, but if it still shows Aanchal-Insource International, then the buyer will understand that this is coming from Insource, which is not the fact. So what happens is they use that leverage, they put the right screen name, they start correspondence with the buyer. When the email comes to the buyer, if there is no safety measures being taken, buyer would assume the new account to be the account that has been given to them for payment. They transfer the money goes to a wrong bank account. The moment the money goes to the wrong bank account, it is transferred immediately or withdrawn from that bank account. So that's a standard process, and I can vouch for it. I've gone through it twice in my 15, 20 years of business at Insource. So when it had happened the first time, we put a lot of safety measures. So second time, thankfully, we were totally saved and nothing happened. So I will also recount the safety measures we've put in place to make sure this does not happen, which is why this time when it happened, we were able to avoid any nuisance whatsoever. We take to the second slide. So in order to make sure that your payments are totally safeguarded between your buyer, vendor, and your organization, whenever you have to introduce any change of bank information or send any new banking information to your customer, what ideally we must do is ask the vendor to send the bank information on a letterhead via email to you. And the same information should come to you on a WhatsApp or an alternate means of information. Maybe you will call them and confirm that this is the information I've received on email. Is this your bank account? So that's the backend information cross-checking that you need to do. Few full safes that we can also process is always take it on the letterhead. Make sure it's not a PDF जो हम लोग digital print करते हैं letterheads, so it's not one of that. It should be written on a letterhead, printed and then signed by the owner or whoever that is going to be in a blue ink. Why? I'll explain you each of the nuances. Why it should be on a letterhead? Because it's very easy for anybody to change anything which is not on an official letterhead. And a hacker may not change the bank account if you don't have a proper letterhead, but he is not necessarily going to know how your letterhead looks like. So if your customer knows this is how you're going to send the information, then the chances of a wrong information being processed are much lesser. Why we should send it only in PDF is because it's difficult to change a PDF, although there are softwares that can change PDF, but we are going to scan the PDF after the signing of the owner, which does not allow for the change of PDF because now it's not a digitally made PDF. Then normally we would say the physical copy should always be maintained by the buying agent. Step number 2 is once we've received this information at our end and cross-verified it at the back end, we should send it to the buyer over email and tell the information to the buyer with the clarity that somebody from the office with an authorized mobile number will be cross-confirming the banking information over to you. Step number 3 would be to reconfirm the banking information with the buyer. We could do it through WhatsApp by sending the same PDF through WhatsApp and saying, please check whether the one that we've got an email and what we are sending it to you on WhatsApp, does that tally or not? You could do it over WeChat, Viber. Some buyers have become very cautious. So you do video calls whereby somebody can hold the banking information over a video call on paper and the buyers take a screenshot and then they cross-confirm the information from the information received on the email. Or you could just simply call them and recount the entire information and make the buyer tally that information. The next step is once the buyer confirms, we should ask our buyers not to delete that information, but use that banking information for all transactions with the particular party in the future. Because that's the only way you can eliminate repeated wrongdoings from the hackers. If the same information is not used and sometimes somebody gets into this loop and a hacker has been watching your system for a very long time, then they will probably also understand the modus operandi of how this entire thing is happening. That's why it's always safe to eliminate all such transactions which can cause any wrong information to pass from one side to the other. 2 things that you must be cautious about is first, if possible, remove all banking information from your performer invoices or your commercial invoices. Once the information has been shared with your customer, request them that we will not send you any further information in terms of bank details on the invoices. Because what if some new person joins in the other organization, they do not know the protocols and some wrong payment is made. Also, please keep them alerted that if in case they ever receive an information on email saying that this is what is a new bank account and you need to pay to this bank account, then you must be informed immediately. And point to note here is when a new bank account information is sent, the name of the bank account always stays the same. It is only the account number and the code that is changed. The SWIFT code and the account number is changed. Beneficiary will always show to be the organization who is actually receiving the payment. So these are the various things that we may do to keep our businesses safe. I have used them in my business and thankfully got saved because of these entire processes that I've been executing for the past 5, 6 years. Avi will also take you through a few of the ways in which the hackers are actually doing this email hacking and what you can do to avoid those issues. Avi, please take it forward.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I hope you all are well. Well, these are some of the methods of email hacking and their preventions. Number one is phishing. So, phishing attack will direct you basically to visit a website which will look like the original website, but in reality, it will be a fake website. And once you will log into your account through that website, all your details will directly go to the hacker. Now, this scam could be done using the following methods. Number one, an email can come to you inviting you to join a social group, or you can get a link to click on it. And once you click on the link, all your details will go to the hacker. Or an email can come to you saying that your bank account is logged and you need to unlock it by signing in. Or an email can come containing some information of your interest which and they'll ask you to simply log into your account. So these are some of the methods which a hacker can use to hack your account. And below are the preventions for phishing. So basically you need to read all the emails carefully before sending in, and you need to check the sender if that sender is original or not. You need to you need to see the link, that the link is original or not before clicking on it. You need to always check the URL in the browser before signing into your account, and always log into your accounts after opening the trusting website only, and not by clicking on any XYZ website. So this is the first method of email hacking and their preventions. The second one is keylogger. So basically keylogger is the more easy hacking step, simple than phishing, because it includes only executable file. So once you will click on that file, all your data can be downloaded by the hacker. And below are the preventions of keylogger. So basically encrypt
One sec, I'll explain keylogger a little bit more. Keylogger basically is a software. It's a .exe file, which you might just think that it's a file that you want to see. But the moment you click on that file, it gets downloaded in the backend of your system. The moment you have that software into your computer, anything and everything that you type on your computer is actually being transferred to a third party. So whoever sends that keylogger software to you, he or she is receiving every information that is being typed by your keys on your computer, and the data is being transmitted. So that's how they will get the site of all your usernames, of all your passwords. This is one of the most easy way, but it's the most dangerous way, because this is not just one hack. This can completely hack your entire system, your bank accounts and everything. So keyloggers are pretty dangerous and some things to be wary about. So at the back end, you will never even get to know that a keylogger has been installed in your system. So antivirus in this case becomes extremely useful and important. Abhi, go ahead.
Yeah, so these are some of the preventions for you to save yourself from keylogger. Number one is encrypt keystrokes. Second, use antiviruses and firewalls in your system always. Use password manager, which will protect your passwords in your computer, and update your software regularly. These are some of the preventions for you to save yourself from the keylogger. The next one is brute forcing. So this is the approach where buyer will try to log into your accounts using the different passwords, which he can use by using your name, your company name, your job titles, hobbies, etc., etc. And the tools which perform brute forcing attacks are air cracking, John the Ripper, Rainbow Crack, Offrec, and Hashcat. And below are the preventions from the brute forcing. So basically your password should have at least 7 characters with the upper and lower case and the numeric characters. Plus it must have a special character also, and it must include punctuations. So these are the methods of email hackings. Now these are some of the tips to avoid email hacking. always configure a secondary email address to recover your for recovery purpose. Always configure the security question and answer in your email account. Never open a email from stranger. If you know that, if you don't know that person, please never open that email. Do not use someone else's computer to check in your emails, and never click on the save your password option. Take care of the phishing links. Do not reveal your passwords to anyone, and do not type your passwords in front of anyone. Renew your software. Always renew your antivirus software. Backup. Always keep the backup of your data. Always enter in the secured Wi-Fi network. Change your passwords frequently, and most important is educate your office staff. So this will be from my side. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope this presentation will help you, and it will help you to save you and your company from these email attacks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So can I just butt in here, Aanchal, with your permission?
Absolutely, absolutely, Vishal.
So I'm sorry my camera is not working because I'm in the car driving back from Moradabad. But I very happily let Aanchal and her team scare the wits out of you guys, and which is good because we live in a very online and a digital world today. So I have a small IT company where all of these activities, we offer something called software as a service, where all of these activities are monitored on a 24/7 basis. Nobody can hack into your system. Nobody can enter your emails. Nobody can take your data. It is monitored on a 24/7 basis, and we generate reports for you on a regular weekly basis. If there is any hacking, if there's any hacking attempt, if there's any infiltration attempt on your systems, it gets logged immediately and reported to you, so you know exactly what's happening. So one of the worst things that can possibly happen to you is something called ransomware. Somebody who hacks into your system and then changes your password and locks you out of your own system, and you just cannot get back in, and then they ask you for money to release your system back to you. So we provide something called cyber backup and protection, where your data gets backed up on a daily basis. If you want, it can be backed up on an hourly basis also, which means that, so suppose somebody hacks into your system and starts ransoming you for or locks you out of your system, you can just delete everything and go back to last day's data, which is all available there for you, or last hour's data if you're backing it up on an hourly basis. So I'll be rolling this out to all our members through the BAA eventually. It's just something, you when you go to your offices, आप वहाँ पे guard बिठाते हो, चोरी होती है, आप guard बदल देते हो, लेकिन आप ताले कभी नहीं बदलते. But nobody looking at the data. In all the discussion that we've had today, we've been talking data, prices, logistics, everything. So protecting your data is going to be the key going forward, because we are all online now. Everything, even what we are doing right now, is online. Everything is digital. So I'll be rolling this out through the BAA, and hopefully some of you will take advantage of this. It's a very simple, straightforward, cheap way of protecting yourselves and your data and your customers' data and your vendors' data. Thank you.
Like the noted internet security.
Can I just?
Yes. No. After if you use this, there is no need for any additional security. No need for any additional antivirus. No need for any additional malware protection. This is all in one suite, which is monitoring your system on every possible aspect of cyber threat on a 24/7 basis. You will not need to install McAfee. You will not need to install Norton. You will not need to install anything else. It'll just be back.
This Norton 360, Vishal, Norton 360 has these features. So is it the same thing or what?
So I'll tell you what happens. So we're living in something called a tech sprawl. There's so many things. You guys are not IT people. I am not an IT guy. But we are running businesses. We should not be managing 50 different IT solutions to run our business. This system just gives you all of those protections in one place, just one place. You don't have to, worry about everything else. Including, if you want, our service models include subscriptions to Office 365, G Suite. All of it comes bundled into this system.
Great. Thank you, Vishal. We'll definitely take this offline.
Achal,
Yes, thank you.
Achal, I have one point to discuss right now here.
Sorry.
As you know, I'm mostly,
Is this
yeah.
regarding the current topic of cyber threats?
Yeah, just one last line on this. I was typing it out on the chat in case I didn't get a chance. Just wanted to request you to mail us this presentation that you'd shared, Anchal and Avi.
Sandhya. It'll
Yeah,
come
because
to
I think it's very helpful for everyone. And then, of course, we can take on Vishal's, bit that he will forward to us.
Done.
Thanks.
The presentation would come to you with the notes and everything. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Anji-san, go ahead.
Achal, as you know, I'm mostly into lighting. So the major problem that we are facing right now from 31st March, the government is withdrawing this licenses that EPCH used to give on the turnover.
Can I just interrupt you one moment? Is
Yeah.
this regarding cyber threats? It's a different topic.
It's a different topic.
Sam, would you mind that I finish the remaining two that are left over
Sure.
and then come back on it? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. So the next topic that we had to discuss was the issue of design copyright, something that Christine had said. Christine, are you there, and would you be able to share a little bit perspective on this?
Yeah, I'll try. I can try and speak.
You can.
Basically, what we're finding is that there are too many people. I think Avi can stop sharing her screen. She's not sharing her screen. Beg your pardon. I think what we're finding is that there are too many people working solely off the internet. So the danger of being inspired by somebody else's original design is a very real threat. We've had a number of call outs in the last few months where our customer buys something from a vendor in India. The vendor says they designed it, but then a designer comes up to our customer and says, you're copying our original design. So very important to do two things. And what I can do, Anshul, is when we have our document ready, I'll share it with you, and then you can share it with the BAA. Is that ask your vendors to always keep a record of where the design has come from. What year did they design it? Because if somebody else comes and says it's my design, and we're not talking about copyright necessarily, we're just talking about somebody targeting a big, sorry.
One sec, I'm going to mute. Go ahead, Christy. Okay, Christy.
Sorry, there's a bit of a noise going on. 1 second. You carry on. I can interject when I can speak.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so design copyright was an issue whereby it is more of people picking up things over the internet and other buyers then pushing for their designs not to be sold by other customers. So anybody has recently faced this issue, or Christine, go ahead.
Okay, I can speak again. Basically, so what we used to all assume that if you change something 20%, that was enough to say that you are not copying. It's not as clear cut as that. So we have situations where some of my customers are retailers and they are targets, and it's quite often a small designer whose work has been seen on Etsy or has been seen on Instagram. Somebody is inspired by it, but they copy it too much. And what the legal team, our client's legal team, then says, yes, this is a case of copying because you have taken their concept. You know, if they've had a clever or a cute idea, and it's very bad in textiles, especially in prints. It's less easy to prove in wovens, but we have had two rug cases where a designer has come forward and said this rug is far too close to our original design, you know, and then it's up to the vendor to prove that they created their own design and how did they create the design. So it's about two things: sensitizing your vendor community, and secondly, making sure that they keep a design record when they offer you product, and when your customer selects a product from their line, that it is the vendor's design, not a knockoff from the internet. So those are the two things that I'd say just to be careful. And we are putting together a document which I'll share with everybody in BAA.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. We will wait to hear more on this particular issue from you. Okay, so going forward, we have William O'Connor is here with us. Becca, Rahul from Becca is here with us, who had a particular specific request to discuss, which is challenges with global departmental and specialty stores pre and post COVID worldwide. Uh, are they here right now? I don't actually see them here.
Yeah, so we are there.
Right. Rahul, so would you like to explain exactly what you'd like to get from the member community, and then we can have a chat on that?
Basically, these global departmental stores worldwide, I mean, they are facing a very challenging time from last 4-5 years. I mean, due to increased competition, and again, there is this online problem. So what we were looking, and now even the COVID has put the things to more extremity for them. So what we were looking for, if like some of the member might have done some study on the demand and some supply impact of it, or maybe, I mean, a lot of the stores, these, I mean, they have filed for Chapter 11. They are curtailing their sizes. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs also in Europe and UK. So, I mean, some sort of that study done by some member, which could be helpful for us. I mean, that is what we are looking for. Or if some member could provide us data, some information in that regard.
So I don't know, Rahul, from my perspective, I can tell you for sure that vis-a-vis demand and supply, what has happened lately is that definitely owing to COVID, there has been a huge hit on the brick and mortar side. I mean, all of us know that nobody's going out retailing, but e-tailing has really become the buzzword. So when it comes to departmental stores and specialty stores, there has been a definite hit for the garment sector. Specifically, I would say it's been a huge hit. But for the home sector, again, there has been a hit on the brick and mortar side, but the online stores have done exceptionally well. I think there has been a huge upsurge of demand when it comes to home furnishings, furniture, lighting, all these products, because people sitting at home have actually bought more and redecorated their houses than bought lesser. But yes, it does not cover the specialty stores and the departmental stores who are working on the brick and mortar model.
So the issue with us is the kind of businesses what we support, William E. Corner, are not the online model stores. So we support more of the brick and mortar stores.
Correct.
Maybe if some member have, I mean, some study or some kind of experience on what are the challenges, like they might have seen some of their customers whom they must be placing orders during these last 4-5 years. And now, even after post-COVID, and if some member has seen it's becoming even worse. So I would like to hear that experience and have some facts about it if possible.
Sure. I'd invite our members and open the floor for them to pitch forward their experience vis-a-vis customers who are actually into wholesale and retail, but on the brick and mortar model.
So Anshul, I'd like to add in here.
Yeah. Anchitanya, go ahead.
This is for Rahul, so last month, the FICCI webinar that we had, we had invited our foreign speaker, Dave, he gave a very, very elaborate analysis on the situation in the US for, the brick and mortar and the e-commerce analysis. So the recording has already been shared. If Rahul would like to go through it towards the end of the session, he's given a very, very detailed analysis. And in fact, he's given it store by retail chain. So that can be very informative.
So Tanya, I assume it must be also there on our newsletter and our YouTube channel.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is on our newsletter on YouTube, and the recordings have already been shared with members.
So Rahul, that's going to be one of your takeaways. We'll share that again with you. Avi is going to share that with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Achal, for that.
Yeah. So anybody else here on the list today, on the panel today, who would like to share any further challenges they would have faced, or any data or anything that you would like to share with Rahul in terms of this business? Sakshi, sure, we'll get you the recording, but if you want to browse, it's going to be the last recording on our YouTube channel, but I'll make sure Abhi sends that recording to you as well. Okay, Rahul, unfortunately, not many people are dealing with the kind of customers you're dealing with, so not much input from the session, but we'll definitely forward this to you.
I think this webinar would be helpful for us. So, I mean,
we'll definitely send this over to you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Achal. And thank you all the group members.
Thanks. Sam, are you still there? I don't see Sam there. Abhi, would you check with Sam if he wants to come on and discuss his issue?
Sure, ma'am.
Guys, any other open issues that anybody would like to discuss today? Any member wants to discuss any of the issues now?
Achal, how about a review on customer travel and?
Oh yes, that's an important point. I hope you all are aware that the show is happening in May from 19th to 23rd in the physical form. EPCH has finally decided to go ahead with the show, so that's official. Are your customers? I mean, do you have the news? Are your customers willing to attend the show? Vishwas, you raising your hand. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
Yeah, Jalji, I was just saying that I have faced a cyber fraud in which, just like Avi has mentioned, that they was inviting to the social sites. So they have invited me to WeTransfer site, and it was completely fake and copy, and it looked like WeTransfer, but when I send the link to my IT friends, so they advise that it's completely fraud and from China base. They also advise that. Right. So I suggest and request all our co-members that even WeTransfer, some other type of buyer's website, they should check once that it's correct or not.
Absolutely. You know, irrespective of how much precaution we put into our systems and watch our systems, being cautious and putting hacks and security measures along the way will always be here. So I would really request the member community to really take this up. For members who are not yet doing the cross verification, banking details, ensuring they are safe, it's a must do in today's date and time, because you don't know what's the next way these brainchilds of the hackers are going to come up with. It's always good to do.
Yeah.
Thanks for
sharing. And they can make a copy of WeTransfer like a website.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Sam,
thanks, Achal.
Issue for the light that you wanted to talk
Yeah,
about?
Achal, from 31st March, I think there is noise.
Vishwas, would you please mute yourself, because there's a lot of background noise.
Yeah. So the government used to give 5% of the total turnover as a DFIC license to the exporters, from which they are able to import the wiring and other components duty free. From 31st March, they are closing this scheme. So that will be a big problem for the lighting industry.
Right. Any which ways, we have a huge lighting industry. Whatever we have will also be threatened then.
Yeah. We are unable to give the goods on the prices that we have already working on.
Oh my God.
Plus 23% is the duty. So that's a big.
For the import of components, you're saying?
Yes.
I know, we've been facing the same issue. Even right now, we're not able to get supply from China in terms of imports of components because of a lot of...
Yeah, we are getting the components right now, but the problem is after 31st March, whatever the container is coming, that has to be duty paid.
Sam, I think that's got to do with the fact that government has decided, in fact, this has been in one of the discussions that's been happening, ye jo Atmanirbhar Bharat se government is being so proactive. So they
So better is, if they want this Atmanirbhar Bharat, so why don't they set up the factories here where we can make the components?
That's what.
Yeah.
That is the need of the hour, that if they do not want to get things imported, they need to set up the factories here. But I don't know, it's definitely not a short-term project, and getting certified by UL is not going to be the easiest task for any factory to start manufacturing cables which are UL certified.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
but you know, Anchal, I was hosting a webinar for ShoeTech recently, which was all about, we had about 200 plus participants who were basically all the manufacturers of the components for the used for the shoe industry. And that was the biggest challenge that we were talking about, India's reliance and reliability on imports coming out of China and other, Southeast Asian countries, whereby due to non-coming or, block on imports, we couldn't really receive it. And so our products were getting expensive. But just wanted to inform that the minister also came for a brief session, and he informed that it is a government's serious sort of part of the agenda, that they are putting certain industries as their priority industry, shoe industry being one of them, and they are actually setting up component manufacturing units in India to make India Atmanirbhar. So exactly the point that we're talking about. But yeah, it is for shoes. So yeah, just if it helps.
The point is who to take this up with, because Sandhya, shoes is governed by a certain ministry. Lighting, again, Sam, your best bet is to approach Rakesh ji, the textile.
That is what me and Vishal ji were discussing, that we should meet Rakesh ji and discuss this thing up.
Yeah.
Because it's not only the lighting, but if you see the hinges and other parts that are used in your furniture also, that are being imported, and now they will be also with the duty.
To be very honest, that is not the most critical part of it, because hinges and ye sare to fir bhi India mein mil jate hain. But lighting definitely is a big issue, because we can't manufacture the components in India as of now. I mean, as of now, we don't have possibility. So definitely, let's take it up, and we'll have to push it through to the textile ministry, because they're the only ones who govern this particular bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing, Sam. Thanks for the heads up. I do believe there is nothing more to be shared from the member body. So if there's anybody else who wants to say something or share something, please come forward. Else we'll probably close the meeting now. We're already 1.5 hours into the meeting. Perfect. So Tanya, would you just give your vote of thanks and close the meeting?
So thanks so much everybody for joining us today, and it was very, very interactive to hear everybody's thoughts on the problems that we are all facing currently, whether it was on the containers or the price highs. And we welcome your thoughts, and let's make it a practice that maybe once in a few weeks we can all get together and bring such issues that we all face as a community, bring them on board and talk about it and find common solutions. Having said that, thank you very much everyone, and have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.